Okay, so for today's project, we're going to do a pineapple. So here is the top, the greenery of the pineapple, and then here is part of the body of the pineapple. You'll see that we're cutting it off, so we're cropping it so we can get more detail into part of the pineapple. So we're going to use a combination of watercolor. You may use the tube or the cake watercolors and acrylic paints. So this is going to be a 2-layer project, okay? So what I would suggest that you do is for the first step is to outline your the pencil lines that I provided for you, and then you may take an eraser and kind of clean up if there's any pencil lines showing. In terms of the supplies for today, you need a bowl of water, if you need a paper plate, some tube watercolors, okay, or like I said, you can use the cake watercolors if you would like. You need some acrylic paints. So I've got several bottles of acrylic paints here, your brushes, and you will need a fairly large brush. If you've got like your 3/4 to an inch brush, that would work. And then some paper to dry off your brushes when you need that. And I think that's about it. So go ahead and pause this, and then when you are ready to do the painting, after you have traced your lines, we'll dig into the watercolor. Okay, so we're going to use I'm going to sit down here. We're going to use the wet on wet watercolor technique for this one. And you can make this pineapple whatever color you want, okay? I'm going to go with kind of the traditional browns that it usually is, and for the body of it, and then some greens up at the top. But if you want to make a blue pineapple with pink top, that is perfectly fine. It's just whatever mood you're in today, just go for it. Or whatever seems, fun and interesting. So I'm going to put out, we're going to use a darker brown. This is called burnt umber. I've got raw umber here. I'm going to put a little bit of that out. I'm going to put just a little bit of white and some burnt sienna. It seems to be a little stuck in the tube, so there we go. And then some white. Okay, let me check one thing. All right, so with the wet on wet, what we're going to do is first, oh, wait a minute. I've got a cat who wants to be in my lap while we paint. That's always helpful, isn't it, Wawa? We're going to put down just water using our larger brush. Okay, so we're going to and I like to do just part of it because we don't have to worry about it drying out. Okay, so I'm doing part of it, just painting with water. Oh, good. A cat hair on here already. Then I'm going to take a smaller brush and add water to my dark brown. And one of the things that I like about this technique is that you can kind of let it blend. So you can put some dark here. See how it's puddling up a little bit? If you want to, you can get rid of those puddles by letting it kind of run down. Then you can also blend other colors to it. See where that goes. You can blend it. See how those are running like that? So you're not going to have total control over what you're doing here, but that's kind of the nature of watercolors. So then you can put another color in there and let it blend. So what we're going for is a little bit of texture here. And getting your paints to move around and blend a little bit. Now, if you want to, you can take your paper toweling, or I've got a Kleenex here, and you can do some texture that way, just wadding it up. Because if you remember, a pineapple, when it's not cut up, it's kind of prickly and kind of gnarly with it. So I'm going to put a little bit of white. Sort of calm down one of these darker ones. A lot of water on it. So we're just layering browns or whatever color you're using. Okay. I got white stuck on there. Didn't mean to do that. I'll get a clean piece of paper. Okay, so then when you're done with that area, let's go with another section of water. And overlap them because you don't want these lines from your previous section. So we're basically just kind of playing around. Hi, sweetheart. Just seeing what kind of effects we can get. For a long time, I resisted liking watercolor because I didn't have the control over it that I have with acrylic paints. But come to like it better. And the not having control is kind of part of the fun, I guess. So see, we're getting some nice, excuse me, kind of texture there. Blending together kind of nicely. So we put some water here. Thanks, Wawa. I just got another cat hair on my paper. Oh, she's just I don't know if you can hear her, but she's just purring and having a really good time. Again, you can kind of roll that around a little bit. It's interesting right there. I think I'll let that be. So see how this is drying and okay. So I need to put some water on this. We have to keep it wet. I'm kind of pouncing my brush rather than back and forth. You can kind of play around with what works best with you. Didn't like all that puddling right in that area, so I think I'll there we go. Okay. So this is a really easy way of getting texture. So now I'm going to turn it upside down so I can get to the greens. And I've got a couple of different colors of green here. So I've got an emerald green and a sap green. There we go. So I don't want as much texture on the leaves because they're smoother, right? So I'm going to brush them. So this is called the wet on dry technique, and this is what we basically have done in the past. So I'm just going to brush. Now before I move on, I'm going to take a new color of green and layer over that a little bit. Now it's going to bleed a little bit more because we're back to wet on wet, right? Okay, so now I'm going to move on. So I'll go back to my regular green, the first green that I used. I think I can quickly do all of these. If you're slower at painting, which is fine, you can just, stop after every couple of leaves and do the second coat of the different kind of green. You don't want it to dry out, the first coat to dry out completely, because we want to be able to kind of blend those together. Oops. Need to go back to my first color of green. Okay, now let that dry just a little bit. And then we're going to go back in with our darker green, and we're not going to put as much water on it, and we're going to use a smaller brush so we can get some shadows on the bottom of these leaves, right? So we're just going to put it on the bottom of the leaves. Just a bit of water. Using a little brush bristle there. What you doing, sweetie? You can't get on my painting. Okay. Now on these that are going up a little bit, you can just kind of put some in there. All right, let's go down. There we go. So just a little bit where there will be some shadow. Blend that a little bit more. All right. Okay, so now you should pause the video until your paint is dry, and then we will proceed back with the acrylic when we are done. All right, so now we've got fairly dry paper. And so we are going to work with some acrylics that just by their very nature really stand out a little bit more. So we're going to add some details to our watercolor background. I'm trying to decide what colors I want to use on the pineapple. I think I'm going to go with some brighter colors because I don't want it to be just brown. We can have the brown background peeping through, but I think I'd like to use some Let's see what I've got over here. Maybe even some purple might be kind of fun with that orange. Okay, so if you have a pencil, you might want to do this in pencil, but you'll remember that there is a kind of a diagonal design on pineapple. So we're going to start, make sure you can see this. We're going to start with our pencil and we're going to make curved diagonal lines. Just nice and light. This is just some guidelines for us when we're painting. Trying to make them parallel. Okay, so I'm not doing, well, I guess I do need to because I can't draw when I've got my paint on there. So we'll finish them up like that, okay? And then we're going to start on the next side. And basically what will happen is we'll make diamonds. Diamond shaped. That needs to go like that. And making them just a little curved makes it look like it's a round rather than a flat pineapple. All right, I think I got it, sort of. Who knows? Let's see. Now I'm looking for a smaller brush. Want to use a round brush. So I think we'll pull out a round brush for these lines. Make sure your brush is, now we just want our brush to be somewhat damp because these are acrylic, and you can practice a little bit. We're going to add just a little bit of water because we are doing line work. So we'll just go slowly and really concentrate. And if they aren't perfect, it's okay. It's made by hand, right? Oops, ran out of paint there. This would be easier to do if I didn't have a cat on my lap. But she insists that that's where she wanted you. If you've ever had cats, you know that they want what they want. Okay, so we have one more line. There we go. Now we're ready to turn this baby over and go the other way. stop. I'm not saying stop to you, I'm saying stop to the cat. She keeps putting her tail in the paint. Okay. One more. Didn't have as much paint. So if you want to go back and kind of, if you have some lines that were lighter, you can go back and do a second coat on those. You can just leave them as is. Okay. And I want some more white. Well, I guess I've got some white there. Okay. I think I'll need a little more white. She got into it. Now Wawa, you have orange and white on your tail now. Goofy Gus. Yes, you're goofy. So orange and purple go together really nicely because they're complementary colors. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit, now this is acrylic, but I added a little bit of more water to it. One, because the paint was kind of dry, but two, because I don't want it to be real bright. I want a little bit of that brown to show through. So whatever color you want to do, what you're going to do is you're not going to touch the edges. You're just going to do the interior of some of mine are not quite diamond shapes, but and I'm not really brushing. I'm sort of poking at the paper because I'm trying to get some different texture. Pick up a little more paint with your brush when you need to. Paper was moving around because I had a hold of the cat's tail to try to keep it out of the paint, but she doesn't seem to mind having paint on her tail. She's purring all the while. I like how that looks. Hope you're happy with how yours is coming out. You probably know this already, but I lived in New England for, you didn't know that I lived in New England, but I lived in New England for a while, and that's where I learned that the pineapple is a symbol for hospitality. And so up in New England, people have pineapple statues and pineapple door hangers outside to signal that people are welcome to visit. I don't see that here in the Midwest, so that's why I was thinking you might not be aware of that symbolism. Okay, so just a little bit. All right. See how those complement? Now, a complementary color means that they're across from each other on the color wheel. Okay, so now we will add some paint to our leaves just to jazz them up a little bit. I've got a lime green here. Oops, didn't mean to kind of go over. Again, we're letting the watercolor background kind of show through. But just to add another dimension of color to our leaves. All right, so then I'm going to take a little bit of white, a little bit of green, and mute that down and add just a little bit of highlight at the top. Remember, we did the dark at the bottom. And now we're going to do some light at the top. Now on these, I'm going to put the light in the middle. And then I'm going to come back with a little bit of white. So we're sort of building up those layers. We go from dark to medium green to green white to white. Well, the cat's gone, but she left a hair. All right, beautiful. Now, speaking of the white theme, what I'm going to do is lighten up our white acrylic just a little bit. And then I'm going to put just a little bit of white over our purple, because remember, we are layering our paint. And if these are a little wet, that's okay, because it will kind of tone down the white that we're putting in there. Just a little more water. So that purple's still showing through. I want to tone that one down just a little bit. Seemed a little garish right there. Not quite in line with what the others were. So when you paint, while your paint is wet, you can go back and play around with it a little bit more. Okay, now if you want to do blue around it or make a background on it, you can do that, or you can just, you know, leave it with the white background. That looks good as well. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you.